Our enemies wanted to destroy us in the most cynical way possible, but we outsmarted them and made a counter-move that hit them very hard. What did our enemies plan, and what did we do in response? Listen to the story until the end. It's very interesting. We gathered in a loose circle near the fire barrel, the weak flame barely holding back the creeping cold. Selner stood apart from us, arms rigid at his sides, head bowed like a man awaiting a sentence. Ramirez fixed him with a cold stare. "Start talking." Selner's voice was low, rough. "They put a device on me, not just a tracker. It transmitted everything. My location, your conversations." The words hit like a slap. I saw Riley's jaw tighten. Someone cursed under their breath. "Why didn't you warn us?" Riley barked, stepping closer. Selner didn't lift his head. "There was a detonator wired to it. Any attempt to tamper with it, to even hint about it, would have triggered it. Killed me. Maybe anyone near me." The silence was heavier than the cold. I felt my gut twist. We'd eaten, slept, fought with him beside us. All the time, a dead man walking. "How the hell did it come off then?" someone snapped. Selner finally raised his eyes. "They found mine." "Mark tore it off," he said. "When you grabbed me back at the clearing, you ripped it off, before it could react." My stomach knotted. I remembered that moment, the rough shove, the blind anger. No thought, just instinct. Nobody spoke for a long while. The fire cracked, spitting tiny embers into the night air. Ramirez folded his arms across his chest. "You telling the truth?" "Swear it," Selner said. "I'd be dead already if I wasn't." The wind picked up, carrying the heavy metallic smell of burnt wiring from the smoldering wreckage beyond the camp. Ramirez let the silence drag out a beat longer, then gave a short nod. "All right." Selner stood there, breathing shallow, as if bracing for a blow. But none came. Not yet. We didn't forgive him. Not in that moment. Maybe not ever. But something had shifted. He was one of us again. Wounded, used, but still standing. And that meant he still had a part to play. Ramirez didn't waste time. He waved us closer to the barrel, the map spread out over the lid, corners held down by spent casings. The firelight warped the lines and marks, but we understood the stakes. "Listen up," Ramirez said. "They think Selner's still broadcasting. We're gonna use that." He pointed to the eastern woods on the map. "We feed them a story, that we're prepping for an assault from here." Riley frowned. "They'll check." "That's the point," Ramirez snapped. "We'll make it look real enough. Trenches, movement, fake chatter." Selner shifted, his hands balling into fists. "And me?" Ramirez looked at him hard. "You're going back, same route, new comm strapped to you. They'll sniff around, but if it looks clean, they'll believe it." The risk hung in the air, heavy as the smoke. Selner nodded once, sharp, no fear in his eyes. Maybe because he didn't have any more left to lose. "We have one shot at this," Ramirez said, voice low. "They buy it. They walk into a goddamn buzzsaw." I leaned in, tracing the fallback lines he'd sketched. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was a plan. And right now, that was enough. "Get moving," Ramirez said. "We don't have long." The camp stirred into motion before the first hints of dawn. Every step was calculated, every shout rehearsed. We needed the enemy to see exactly what we wanted them to see. Selner left first, under the cover of the dim mist, the fake transmitter taped against his ribs beneath a ripped jacket. Jackson and Foster shadowed him from a distance until he disappeared past the tree line, their silhouettes melting back into the fog. Meanwhile, Riley, Ramirez, and I worked fast on the eastern side. We dug shallow trenches just deep enough to look real from a distance. Empty crates and sandbags were scattered in organized chaos, half-built fortifications giving the appearance of a hasty but deliberate staging ground. We kept our movements loud. Men barked fake orders. I made sure to hammer a few boards into a frame hard enough to echo. Foster even set off a few controlled smoke charges tucked behind the ridgeline, thin wisps curling into the sky as a false signal of activity. By mid-morning, the first watchers appeared. Tiny flashes from the tree line, glass catching sunlight, scopes. Eyes on us, I muttered, feeling the hairs on my neck rise. Ramirez grunted. Good. Let 'em watch. We didn't break rhythm. A steady, convincing theater. Patrols rotated along makeshift paths. Supplies were delivered to hollow crates. Radios crackled with scripted nonsense about Eastern Spearhead readiness. Selner's gamble had worked. They were paying attention. Still, every move felt like tiptoeing across a minefield. If even one of their scouts got too close and saw through the charade, I tightened my grip on the dummy rifle slung over my shoulder, jaw locked. We needed them to believe, no matter what. And by the way, those flashes kept dancing out there. Maybe, just maybe, they did. The first movement came just before noon. Ramirez spotted it first. Dark shapes emerging from the tree line, moving fast and low. Binoculars confirmed it. Enemy squads, more than we expected. Maybe 50 or 60 men, splitting into two groups to flank what they thought was our Eastern Spearhead. Showtime, Ramirez muttered. We slipped into our real positions, farther back, dug into camouflage trenches and foxholes arranged along a narrow kill zone. The fake camp lay abandoned ahead of us, smoking gently, a tempting target. The enemy crept closer. We let them come. 30 meters, 20. Ramirez's hand came down. The signal. Gunfire exploded from both flanks at once. Tight, controlled bursts. I squeezed the trigger until my rifle bucked hard against my shoulder, the world flashing with muzzle bursts and dust. The enemy broke almost instantly. Some dropped where they stood, shredded by the crossfire. Others tried to scatter, but the terrain penned them in. Their lead units slammed into our secondary firing lines, Riley's squad, hidden behind a bank of rubble. Short, brutal work. Push, Ramirez barked. We moved in waves, covering each other, tightening the noose. Grenades arced through the smoke, detonating with sharp, stomach-punch blasts. I caught glimpses of enemy soldiers throwing down weapons, hands in the air, eyes wide with terror. By the time it ended, the ground was littered with the dead and dying. Smoke clung low over the battlefield like a dirty shroud. We gathered the survivors at gunpoint. Among them, a few officers, judging by the scraps of insignia they still wore. Riley leaned on his rifle, breathing hard. Not bad for a bunch of half-dead bastards. I didn't answer. My hands were steady, but inside something buzzed. A warning. This had been too easy, too clean, and whatever came next, it wouldn't be. We pulled the prisoners into the half-collapsed remains of an old supply shed, shoved them down hard against the dirt floor. Their weapons and gear were stripped, tossed into a growing pile outside. No blindfolds, no handcuffs, just 3 rifles aimed steady at their heads. Ramirez crouched in front of the highest-ranking one, a grizzled sergeant with a bloody gash above his eye. The man stared back with a kind of empty defiance, but the way his hands shook betrayed him. Names don't matter, Ramirez said, voice flat. Tell us what's coming. The sergeant said nothing. Riley stepped forward, slammed the butt of his rifle into the dirt inches from the man's foot. Last chance. You talk, you live. The sergeant swallowed. His tongue darted over cracked lips. Reinforcements, he rasped. Big ones. Battalion-sized. They're moving now. My stomach clenched. Battalion. Easily 300-400 men, maybe more. When? Ramirez pressed. By nightfall, the sergeant whispered. The other prisoners nodded weakly, fear breaking through whatever loyalty they had left. Their orders, I asked, stepping closer. The sergeant's voice dropped even lower. Annihilate your camp. No survivors. Full sweep. Outside, the cold wind moaned through the cracks in the shed's walls. The weight of what he'd said pressed down on all of us. Riley muttered a curse under his breath. Foster just stared at the dirt, face pale. We'd won this round, but it hadn't bought us much. Ramirez stood up slowly, looking down at the prisoners like they were already ghosts. "Mark," he said, "get ready to send the message. Command needs to know we're about to get steamrolled." I scrambled back to the command post, a half-sunken shelter of sandbags and splintered wood, and ripped the tarp off the radio set. Fingers fumbling, I tuned the battered receiver, static hissing in my ears. "Echo Actual to Overwatch, emergency traffic," I barked into the mic. "Immediate threat. Requesting reinforcement. Repeat, requesting immediate reinforcement." Seconds dragged into minutes. The line crackled, the void on the other end stretching so long it felt like a lifetime. Finally, a voice, cold and clipped. "Traffic acknowledged. Stand by for orders." We waited, huddled around the radio like men awaiting a final sentence. The reply came, broken but clear enough. "Reinforcement en route. Codename, Operation Judgment. Prepare for heavy insertion. ETA, classified. Hold position until contact." I stared at the radio, heart hammering. "Judgment?" I repeated aloud, as if the word itself might explain anything. Ramirez knelt beside me, his face unreadable in the gloom. "What the hell is Operation Judgment?" Riley asked, voice tight. No one had an answer. The only thing we knew was the tone, not reassurance, not standard procedure. Something different, something bigger. Beyond the hills, the horizon boiled with the smoke of marching troops. You could almost feel the ground vibrating with their coming. I tightened the strap of my rifle, the weight of the next hours sinking into my bones. We thought we knew what war was. We were wrong. Whatever was coming, it was going to change everything, and there would be no turning back.